Welcome everybody. Welcome of the Hub Berlin. Extremely pleased to see so many of you. And welcome, of course, to the first point on the agenda today. It's the EU policy pitch, an extremely interesting format, I think, coming at an extremely interesting time. Because as you know, and if I counted well, in 45 days, we will have the European elections here in Germany. And it's a parliament for at least 440 million people. After yesterday, one can even say 500 million people. So we are not too sure. I promise not to make any Brexit-related comments today, but that's the only one I will make. So let me just briefly introduce you to the format of the policy pitch that we envisaged. It's the format where you are the least bothered by the moderator and gives the most time to the speakers that are here today. I'm really pleased to have 6 high-ranking candidates from 6 different parties for the European elections. So it's really a great format for you to see how each of these candidates envisages the digital future of Europe. So the only rule is that each candidate has 4 minutes of speaking time. So in these 4 minutes, you are free to outline whatever you like, as long as it's about digital issues and as long as it's in English, since we're talking about Europe. And after the 4 minutes, the show band Neukölln, which is joining us today, will slowly start to play some music, so you also know that your 4 minutes are coming to an end. And then after that, we have our jury, which I will introduce to you in a minute, that will ask some questions to you and also comment a little bit what you said, what they liked and what they didn't like. So before I introduce the jury to you, let me just say the order of the candidates that we have. Just so you don't wonder, having a last name starting with B was not the criteria for the selection of the speakers. It's just a coincidence. So we will start with Mr. Breyer, then continue with Mr. Bütikofer, continue then with Mrs. Bentele, Mrs. Beer, Mrs. Bischoff, and finish with Mrs. Niebler. But before we start with the first speaker, let me briefly introduce to you our jury that we have. I'm really pleased to have a really great mix. So we have Christina Kraus, who's co-founder from Mesh Cloud. She's really passionate about digital transformation in large enterprises and has a technical background, studied computer science and business in Darmstadt and Berlin, and worked at the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence in Berlin. So welcome to you. Then we have Carla Hustedt. We have Carla Hustedt, who's leading the Ethics of Algorithms project for the Bertelsmann Stiftung, founded an NGO in the past, and consulted clients from the technology, education, and health sector. She considers herself a digital generalist, and she has a particular interest in checking that, to look at the societal consequences of algorithm decision-making. Welcome. And last but not least at all, we have Professor Moritz Helmstetter, who's Managing Director of the Max Planck Institute for Brain Research in Frankfurt. You studied medicine and physics in Heidelberg, and interestingly completed your doctoral thesis with a Nobel Prize laureate. And your particular interest is in connectomics. Well, you will probably refer to it as an emerging research field of mapping neuronal networks in the brain in high-scale resolution. So welcome to you. We have a very diverse background. So it will be interesting to see your comments. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our first speaker, Dr. Patrick Breyer, who was a member of the Schleswig-Holstein State Parliament for the Pirate Party. He temporarily chaired the Pirate Parliamentary Group, and he's an active member of the Working Group on Data Retention, and of course, the leading candidate for the Pirate Group for the European elections. Welcome, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been invited to set out my policy priorities. So the first thing I thought was, let's ditch the slides and focus on writing a good speech. And the top policy priority really for the EU should be defending human rights in the digital era. That means our right to privacy, because it is intended to protect the powerless from abuses by the powerful. In a free world, we cannot tolerate mass surveillance or bulk data collection, for example, in the context of the upcoming e-privacy regulation. We need to eradicate blanket data retention laws, and everybody should have a right to browse anonymously and without every action being tracked the web. Our freedom of speech is at risk where algorithms designed by private corporations filter what we can upload, where operators, including non-commercial operators and small businesses, are required to remove terrorist content within a time frame that is too short for them to handle. And let's secure information technology. Insecure devices increasingly threaten our lives and our property. So we do need a right to have vulnerabilities fixed by manufacturers. We need to have a right to fix devices on our own. And we can't tolerate backdoors, for example, in encryption technology. We need to vitalize competition in the social media and messaging markets, for example, by requiring the near monopolists that are active in these fields to make their services interoperable with their competitors' services. But you know, aside from specific policies, I believe what really needs to be made a priority is to educate EU policymakers on information technology. One of them famously said earlier this year, I may quote, "At Google, there is the page where you can click on memes, a column of its own." You will remember that was Axel Voss, the rapporteur on copyright reform. And you know, where policymakers appear to have no idea of the consequences of their policies and appear to be merely puppets of other actors, democracy risks to lose the trust of an entire generation of digital natives. Therefore, we need to regularly bring in independent experts, for example, scientists, to explain information technology and the consequences of policies. We need regular debates with citizens on contested issues. And we need to deploy tools that allow digital participation in policy making. For example, allowing citizens to publicly comment and discuss legislative proposals. The public also needs to be made aware and mobilized where IT policy is about to change their lives. Uncomfortable truth will certainly need to be disclosed. And all in all, I think we need digital enlightenment, or to put it in other words, reflect first and regulate second. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we got some very important points here. Also the goals, I mean, the goals that you described, what we need to face and how we are going to do it. But what do you think, how can we kind of find the balance between the control and actually the use of the data so that we can implement new technologies and use our data to have a competitive advantage against other companies or other large corporations?
I think it's important to understand technology and its consequences and to know its limits. There are some places where we shouldn't use technology. For example, voting machines are not a good idea because you cannot guarantee the trust that is needed in an election process. And so you need to know the limits and you need to design policies to shape, for example, artificial intelligence. You know, I've just sued the European Commission a couple of weeks ago because they are running a project to develop a video lie detector that is to be used at our borders to interview people in front of their smartphones and to try to detect whether they are lying by signals on their face. And that is voodoo technology, which doesn't work. And they're not even prepared to disclose the results of this project. And so I think we need to have a transparent debate on what works and how it could be made to work.
It's interesting that you mentioned this program, because my question was exactly on this. How do you want to make sure that the use of artificial intelligence or automated decision-making by public sector institutions, in particular in sensitive areas such as border control, will be transparent, that there will be the opportunity for auditability, for, as you said, public discourse, which I believe is essential if we want to gain the trust of people in this technology?
Well, the first question is technology a good way to deal with the situation? I think at border controls, what's most needed is having good personnel that is well trained and enough personnel to be able to process people quickly. I don't think that trying to detect lies from verbal signals even works. The courts have decided long ago that it's no use in discovering the truth, and you know, even having an error rate of 30% translates to every minute lots of people being erroneously classified as a risk. And so there are some fields where it doesn't make sense at all to use this technology. But certainly research needs to be transparent so that the results can be scientifically discussed and improved. It is a process that needs to be instituted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dr. Breyer. Really interesting points you made. So it looks like the Pirate Party is going to build their campaign also on some of the issues around data protection and copyright.
Definitely.
So thank you very much for your words.
Thank you.
So our next candidate in line is Mr. Reinhard Bütikofer, a member of the Green Party and co-chair of the European Green Party. He's a long-established member of the European Parliament, a full member of the Industry Committee, and he's a vice chair of the European Parliament's delegation with China, as well as a member of the delegation to the US. So I'm sure you will focus also on the international dimensions. We are happy to hear what you have to say, Mr. Bütikofer. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Again, good morning, everybody, and thanks for having me. The industrial pessimists have already passed judgment on Europe's digital ambition, and it's negative. Kai-Fu Lee recently said, the AI guru said in Munich, that the only question that was still open was whether the west wind would beat the east wind or the east wind would beat the west wind, but Europe would not even be on the podium. I happen to disagree with that. I believe that if Europe pools its capacities in one cohesive European industrial policy, we are still able to be competitive. Of course, it makes no sense to try pursuing a strategy that says we want to be leading in every single segment. Rather, we should focus on where our strengths lie. And our strengths in Europe lie in the realm of productive technologies and combining productive technologies and digital technologies. So basically the combination of 5G and Industry 4.0. I think our strength also lies in combining the digital revolution with the eco-efficiency revolution. Our strength lies in facilitating that small entities, SMEs, can pick up the digital transformation. And I also believe that we should focus very much on facilitating a good environment for creating the needed skills for the digital development. We not just need the skills, we need a political and economic framework for financing the huge societal challenge of allowing people to reskill, to upskill, to relearn, and to remain part of our society as full digital natives. I believe that we should focus on a couple of issues that are particularly pertinent from the perspective of our traditions. Competition policy has to be redefined. Cybersecurity is of core relevancy. That's why I, for instance, am very reluctant to allow companies into the backbone of our digital communication networks that are not trustworthy. I also believe that we should focus a lot on ethics in regard to AI. AI can enhance the productivity of human labor, or it can substitute human labor. And we have to make an educated decision about where we want to have what. I also believe that there are other more philosophical or societal dimensions to how we should deal with digital. For instance, we should focus a lot of our efforts on avoiding digital divides between modernized industrial centers and the back country. Digital innovation facilitates that a catch-up process for regions that have become de-industrialized. When Kai-Fu Lee says that an algorithm written by an average engineer can beat a good expert, that shows the potential of redeveloping industries in other regions.
Thank you very much. I really like the opportunistic approach. However, I kind of felt that you focused quite a lot on the economic and industry opportunities of technologies such as AI. And I actually read the Green Program for the European election, and it said that you want to develop technology, particularly AI, zum Wohle des Menschen, like human-centered technology. What are the fields of application where you see the biggest opportunity for humans? What's your vision for the people of Europe?
Let's look at the health sector, for instance. I could envision that AI could be extremely supportive in enhancing the analytical capacity in the health sector, scanning your brain and identifying where the tumor really sits, which gives the doctor a better shot at being efficient and effective in curing you. That's one element. Another element is, of course, in the realm, and I did mention that, I think, of eco-efficiency. Digital technologies can help us a lot in promoting industrial symbiosis, where the excrements of one industry becomes the secondary resource of another, or where we reduce emissions, or where we reduce exploitation of natural resources. Those are two examples.
I think you nicely focused on industrial views, where data has completely different meaning than in the personal realm that is currently spearheaded by the US. So I think that is a very fair point, and one that matches the fact that data can come from very different sources and may have much less privacy problems when it comes from industrial sources. My question is, how do you see the role of research in this context? You mentioned economy, you mentioned obviously the human factor and ethics, but what is your view on basic research funding, which has a major emphasis in Europe? Is that something that you would invest in this context?
The European Parliament just decided on the Digital Europe program, which provides funding in the dimension of about 10 billion. Our position is, and I think that's widely shared by colleagues also from different groups, that we should double the overall size of the Horizon Europe program and make sure that a larger percentage would be put exactly to that purpose. But if you let me add one other point on research, I think we should also look at the dangers. And when we start on one hand from a discriminating algorithm, on the other end there is the dystopia of a tech totalitarian society. And this is already being developed in Xinjiang, for instance, in the far west of China.
Thank you, Mr. Bütikofer. Very interesting remarks. Very interesting remarks, looking at the potential of digital technology with regard, for example, to sustainability, but also looking at the tremendous challenges with regard to skills, for example. So thank you very much. Our next candidate in line is Hildegard Bentele. She's the lead candidate of the CDU in Berlin. And you have an international background, you are a trained diplomat, so obviously you have a European perspective, and you come from one of the world's biggest startup capitals, so I'm sure that is something that will be important to you. So the floor is yours, looking forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Being currently a member in the Berlin State Parliament and hopefully the Christian Democrat voice of Berlin in the future European Parliament, I would like to focus my pitch on startups, since startups have grown to an important factor in the Berlin economy, making it even the startup capital of Germany and providing work to 100,000 people over the last 10 years. In our election program, we also emphasize the innovative power of startups, having in mind that many of the nowadays global digital players started as small startups. We have not lost the hope to see one day emerge also European digital big players. To achieve these goals, we have to improve the conditions for startups on the national and on the European level. First, we need to address the issue of venture capital, since Europe is falling largely behind its competitors from China and the US. In this regard, the European Commission could play a role in giving incentives to institutional investors to invest in young, fast-growing companies and venture capital funds. In addition, financial support should not only be given to in the founding phase, but also in the scaling phase. It happens too often that young startups after a promising start are being bought by non-European competitors, which hinders our goal to build up a real healthy backbone of small and middle-sized European digital players. In Berlin, it happens also too often that startups have problems to get access to public procurement. This might be partly due to the specific character of the Berlin administration, but there are also hurdles from an objective point of view the EU could eliminate. The EU should move from elimination of risks to reasonable risk management as a standard for public procurement. Characteristics such as longevity of a company, high turnover and large numbers of employees should no longer be the primary criteria for suitability. Rather, the assessment should focus on the suitability of the proposed solution itself. Third, the EU should also work on easing administrative hurdles. An EU-wide limited liability company could significantly decrease bureaucratic obstacles for startups. Furthermore, administrative one-stop agencies should become the standard offer for startups. Ideally, administration is fully digitized, following the example of frontrunners like Estonia. Startups also largely depend on workforce from abroad. That's why the idea of issuing startup visa should seriously be discussed. Fourth, the EU should dedicate funding in its budget for the creation and support of local startup ecosystems, potentially building on existing digital innovation hubs and on cooperations with research institutions. Finally, in the European Parliament, we should give startups permanent interlocutors by founding an interparliamentary group for startups.
Thank you very much. You focused on startups, obviously a very valuable part of true market economy. One limitation that you did not so much mention is availability of data. You mentioned public administration as one source of data where data sources could be streamlined. Another one that I would like to bring up is healthcare, where again the interaction with privacy makes it extremely difficult to get good and trustworthy data that any current data-driven AI relies on. So do you have any plans or opinions on regulatory context Europe-wide that might match what China is doing, which is give a lot of care about data management in the healthcare sector in order to be able to do what a previous candidate outlined, to use healthcare-related AI for the better of mankind. So do you have any opinion on that?
No. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, thank you a lot for putting so much focus on the startups. What I would like to know is, do you have any ideas on how to strengthen the cooperation between startups or between companies and startups within the European Union? I think we have made a lot of progress within Germany, and now, for example, me or our startup, we spent 6 months in the US last year, and sometimes I have the feeling that it's easier to go to the US than to go to other European countries. Any ideas on that?
Yeah, I think we should also make use of the exchange programs we have, like Erasmus, that we can also, I think the idea is also that startups could participate, or the employees of startups could participate with preparation, language courses, and to make also internships to watch out what others are doing and get experience from abroad. I think why not use these established programs to expand them to the special needs of startups? That's maybe could be a focus also in the future.
My question relates a little bit to what has been asked before, but I think maybe a bit broader. So something we see in data-driven markets, extreme tendencies of monopolization. How do you want to avoid that there are big companies who just take the idea from the small startups and make it better because they have better data?
Well, no, I don't know.
Okay, then I may use the last 20 seconds for, again, a question relating to research. You mentioned you want to integrate research institutions in those startup hubs. Do you have more concrete ideas? What kind of research institutions, what kind of funding in the end, what kind of funding are you going to procure?
Yeah, I think we should also establish a new innovation budget which could go directly into these kind of corporations and expand them.
Thank you, Mrs. Bentele. So with you, we would have a strong voice for startups in the European Parliament. So thank you for your input. Our next candidate is Nicola Beer, who has a long experience in politics already. She's the FDP's lead candidate for the European elections and her party's Secretary General since 2013. With strong European credentials, of course. You were State Secretary for European Affairs already at the Hessian State Ministry of Justice. And interestingly, you received a bilingual education in German and French.
Yeah, but in French.
Yeah, in French.
Not
so that
English.
serves you well in Brussels. So on the election poster, your slogan is, because we love Europe, we want to change it. So we are interested to hear how you want to change it.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Do you remember when you used a computer the first time? I mean, for some of you, it was an Atari or a Sinclair SX or a Commodore. For the kids today, for the most, it's a tablet. Do you remember when you used a telephone for the first time? Maybe some of you remember the Fisher-Price telephone was one of my preferred toys when I was a kid. But maybe you remember also dial phones, key telephones, or your first mobile phones, bigger than today, but with a battery who lasts another week. The first telephone of kids today is probably a smartphone. Do you remember how you helped your parents to programming the VHS video recorder, and then the beginning or the end was cut off? That you registered on a compact cassette, or that you had spaghetti of tape with a pencil fixed. So if you don't remember, then you are probably younger than me. But we, like you and me, we use listening and watching streaming services today. So we went almost completely digital, but to complete the finalization of digitalization, to become really 100% digital, we need a paradigm shift. We have to think of all processes fully digital. And I think we have to stop thinking what can be digitized, but to think what cannot be digitized in that moment. And for that, we need a legal framework which focuses on basic principles, which fosters innovation, a regulatory framework which attracts investments and which just creates an environment which gets the best out of people. What are these basic principles for me? It's first, we need a digital economy which can flourish. We need a digitized education system which prepares our children for the future. And we don't have to forget that the future is going to school in this moment. Third, we need an internet which citizens can participate in the democracy decision-making process. We need more women in digital. And we need citizens who self-determine their future. It's not the algorithm which is determine the destiny of people. It's the people who should have control over their digital ego. These are the basic principles we must actively defend together. And to achieve this, I think we need a real digital market in the European Union with our own commissioner, so to bundle all the competences. We need to increase the Juncker Fund by 100 billion over the next 5 years. We need a risk capital directive, and we need to establish e-governance throughout European Union, in the whole European Union. We needed to double the high-tech research budget, and especially freedom of expression, data protection are fundamental for me to everything we do. This also means that we have to protect whistleblowers and fight the idea of unrestricted data retention. And as far as copyright is concerned, we must to protect authors, but I think we must not play authors and internet users off against each other at the expense of freedom of expression. We need fully transparency for citizens about tracking and full self-determination about personal data, but nobody can handle the future alone. We need to establish a dialogue between society and technology, and so I just wish me that you please be part of this dialogue and talk to us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. You started your speech with children, so what can we do to make children more digital or to educate children, because you were the first one that mentioned this topic as well. What can we do in terms of education and to make, to build the talent that we need in order to foster the digital ecosystem here?
In my opinion, it's really a key for the future of digitalization. We have to train children, we have to begin earlier than we begin today, we have to modernize the content in schools and also to modernize all which is qualification of teachers, to modernize also the whole equipment of schools so that we can really use this as a mean for qualification, for self-determination, and it's not only for younger children, we have to keep up also everybody in the process so that everybody has the chance to self-determine his future and also to protect his data, to self-determine his personal data.
Thank you very much. I like very much that you brought up the issue of getting more women into the field. First one to mention that, and I think there's a big gap, definitely. We recently did a study on what Europeans know and think about algorithmic decision-making, and something we found is that 74% of Europeans, in Germany the number is even higher, want more control of automated decision-making. And in the European election program of the FDP, you also say that Europe needs a joint legal and ethical framework. In which fields do you see a need for more strict regulation, and what's your understanding of that kind of framework?
My understanding is that we need a discussion in the society, also how to transport our ethic framework in the digitalized world. I mean, we have standards, we have principles in our frameworks nationally and also on the European base, but often it's a discussion how you have to interpret it in the new digitalized world, and I think there we didn't go to the end yet. Maybe we have to change some of the regulation, maybe you have to widen some of the regulation because we cannot be so quickly as the developments we see in technology, but this should be fixed together so that we can use all the chances, but we are aware of the risks and can manage especially the risks so that we really can use the chances for everybody and are not determined by the technique.
Very briefly, regulation is easy. Investment and encouragement is difficult. Where do you want to put more money?
I want to put more money in research and in risk capital. I want to have digital free zones to be...
Sorry, we had to interrupt there. It was just getting very interesting when it's about the money, of course. But really interesting remarks. So it seems like the Liberals' vision of the digital future is very much based on the dialogue between technology and society. And it's also up to the individuals to decide where they want to use technology. So thank you very much. Our next speaker is Gabriele Bischoff. Yeah, she's running for a seat in the European Parliament on the Social Democratic list. You are the president of the work, or you were, or you still are, sorry, you still are the president of the workers group in the European Economic and Social Committee. And you are very active in the European movement, so also strong European credentials. You are a trade unionist, you are on the board of the DGB, on the Directorate for Europe. Yeah, you want to fight for good working conditions, equalization and employee participation all over Europe. And we are really interested to hear how you want to do that. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. In recent months, the debate about the future of Europe and the digital future of Europe has been taken from the institutions also to the streets of Europe. The European Copyright Directive became a hot topic, and essentially it is also a debate about different concepts of digitalization. In our view, it is very essential to develop a European perspective for the digitalization of all. And the European perspective should differ from the perspective and the principles models of digitalization of the US or, for example, from China. While the US economy is governed by a liberal market model with low state regulation, China has a state-led model with communication as the key of the political economy in their Chinese post-2008 development model. In both models, privacy is not protected well enough, nor by the American model and the big American players like Google and Facebook, and not by the development of the social credit system in China. Our European model is still under construction. It's strongly influenced by the US players and also weakened by tax competition. But we have some strong weapons in the EU. We have a good antitrust regulation, and we started to develop policies of data protection. Europe, with its common market with more than 500 million people, it has a chance still to become a leading innovation region of the world if it takes the right steps now, and also if it starts to discuss future issues and not concentrates on Brexit and issues like that. And if we want to become one of the leading innovation regions, we really have to invest more in research and development, and therefore we really have to develop a policy where at least we invest 3% of GDP into research and development. And in today's economy, an increasing share of the value does emanate from the data extracted from human activity. And data acquisition, transformation of data, and usage of the resulting information are key processes of digitalization. And here the SPD is aware of the increasing risk of data monopolies. And therefore, we push for European data pools, for European clouds, and for European platforms. We propose a European data for all policy to disrupt data monopolies. We want open access to data made anonymous, especially also for SMEs and for civil society. And the European Union should help to establish European cloud services for open science, for European R&D, and last but not least, also for the organizations of civil society. Digital capitalism uses the means of platforms quite frequently. European platforms should not excel in low labor standards, exploitation of labor, and the export of profits from the field of operations to islands with a lot of sunshine or to tiny letterboxes. European platforms should be open to the private economy, but be of special interest for the public and the non-profit economy. And we need
Thank you very much. Something I really liked was that you mentioned civil society and the role of civil society as an active stakeholder in digitization. And you also mentioned the importance of data and access to data. And I really like the focus on that. However, I would really like to better understand how you want to put this into practice. How do you want to decide what kind of data and whose data is going to go into that pool, who's going to get access, and how do you combine this approach with privacy?
Yeah. On one hand, for us, it is very, very essential also that we provide a good legal framework for this, especially when it comes to the question who owns the data. And as I mentioned in here, Europe has the capacity here to create a good balance. On one hand, to really protect the data and the privacy of data, and not enter into a model like, for example, the Chinese or the American, and on the other hand, to give enough room also for innovation and for new approaches here. We also favor, therefore, a more focus, especially on a European Innovation Council that could collect more knowledge of this and have more stakeholders on board to advise the political institutions in ways forward.
I think the intentions are very much understandable to increase regulations and protect more. But what we are seeing, obviously, is with the three big players, Europe is rather losing out currently in terms of being a big player in AI. So the question is, how can you, foster development rather than just making sure less is happening? So what are the investments you are proposing, also compared to other candidates? Would you also double, for instance, research budget, or triple, even better? So what are your proposals where to invest more to encourage development and not just suppress development from privacy concerns?
On one hand, yes, you have to invest more. I mean, we have a debate on the new multi-annual financial framework of the next years, and I think we need to invest much more of the resources we have on the future. What we have to do is we have a very skilled workforce in Europe, and we need to invest, but also we have to have a strategy for upskilling this workforce in Europe. And with a very good balance in Europe between freedom on one hand and security, we can manage that. But can I add one point, if I might?
If it's a short one.
I think it is is very, very important for Europe to have a coherent strategy on digitalization and the future of work. And in my view, this is more important for the future of Europe than a debate about Brexit or other issues. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So the SPD really seems to follow the European approach, wants to build up a European approach to address issues like data monopolies and the like. So again, very interesting. Thank you very much. And last but not least at all, we have Professor Dr. Angelika Niebler. Welcome you on stage. You are in the European Parliament since 1999, so you are very experienced. You're a chairwoman of the CSU delegation and party vice chair of the CSU. You sit in important committees such as the Industry Committee, the Legal Committee, and you were, of course, a lead on the Cybersecurity Act that was recently passed. And of course, involvement of women in politics is also something that is extremely important to you. So I'm really interested to hear what else is on your mind when you think of digital, before opening the floor to questions from the audience. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. Well, good morning to everybody. It's great to be here. Let me submit 3 messages. My first message as regards the digital world and the digital policy in the next European Parliament is cybersecurity needs to be on top of our agenda. Everything is connected, everyone is with everyone connected. We have smart grids, smart homes, smart houses, some smart fridges, some smart watches. And for that, I think cybersecurity has really to be on top of our political agenda. As you mentioned, Benjamin, we passed legislation on that. We have a strategy in Europe on cybersecurity. We concentrated on critical infrastructure at the beginning. Then we passed the Cybersecurity Act, and right now we are trying to help the whole ecosystem to become more cyber-secured by connecting and trying to develop competence centers in all 28, or maybe no likelihood in a couple of months, 27 member states. That's my first message. My second message is, I think, as regards digital issues, we have to think globally and to act on the European scale. And that is something I really think is very important. Reinhard Bütikofer actually mentioned that as well. Competition all over in the world is tough. I think our big competitors, they are in the US, they are in China, they are in Singapore, they are in Israel, they are in India, everywhere. And I think for us in the European Union, it's crucial, that we play our role. It was mentioned before. And I think we have to reassess actually also in the next couple of months and years what can be done in order to foster competition in the European Union, but also allowing our companies, as Hildegard Bentele mentioned, from the startups to the big corporations, how can we help our European companies and our people to be competitive in this globalized world? And for that we have to reassess our competition rules, and for that I think it's important also to go for setting the international standards on standardization, for instance. We did that with the data protection, general data protection regulation, GDPR. I think we have a chance to do that now with the Cybersecurity Act, and I think as regards norming standard settings, this is what we are very good in Europe, and maybe we have a chance that our European standards are going to be also the pilot for on the international level. Third message I'd like to deliver, I have another 1 minute 30, okay. Third message I'd like to deliver is that I think we have to invest in people, we have to invest in innovation, in research, we have to invest in technological breakthroughs. We've done a lot during the last years, that is, Reinhard mentioned it, we passed, or will pass next week, the Horizon Europe program, 120 billion. We'd like to invest in research, in innovation. We'd like to facilitate getting access to these funds on the European Union level, so I think that's important. And allowing that not only the big ones, who have their legal departments to work on getting the money, are going to be the beneficiaries. We have to ensure that also the startups gets the money, and in particular our startups, when they like to get the European rollout or an international rollout, meaning that they are scaling up for that, I think we also need to be much more flexible in our rules. So that's what we have to head on, that's what we have to implement. And of course, we have invested, we have a new program for startups and companies to do this rollout. That is the Invest EU fund. More than 370 billion euro have been collected all over in the world to help also our companies increase.
Thank you. I obviously particularly like your emphasis also on innovation and research funding because typically disruption is unexpected and we don't know yet what it will be. So can you give numbers to that again? So what is your proposal to increase or further put budget into the Horizon programs or ERC, or what is your concrete proposal there?
My concrete proposal is that we put a lot of money in research and innovation. We have, if you look at our budget, we have 3 pillars. It's agriculture, it's structural funds, and it's research innovation. And we have to ensure in the next term that, a lot of money is also vested in that part. And we have to work on our regulation. So years ago, we created the European Research Fund. We facilitate really having access to these funds. It's a really huge success story. ERC grants are known all over the world. And I think this is the path we have to continue.
So you're going to increase the ERC budget?
Yes, we did.
By?
I don't know. On the whole, it's 120 billion. It's not yet decided. So Commission came up with a proposal, 100 billion. We want to increase it, but it will be a tough fight with the member states in council to get the money vested into that pillar of our budget.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your focus on cybersecurity because I think that's really an area where we can be very strong and where we can differentiate in comparison to other countries and other markets. But apart from innovation, another thing I would like to ask about is how would you invest into infrastructure? How can we make sure that we have the infrastructure that all the startups but also the large corporations need in order to flourish and to build these digital ecosystems on top of them?
Well, I think the money is necessary. I think we have to go for labs. We have to invest in, encourage also, that the facilities are there, that the access to data is there. Maybe we also have to reconsider, how GDPR works in practice right now. I think we should, in a 2 years term at least, check as to whether the rules are fine. I think that is what we have to do. And one point I'd like to stress, because that's a huge problem right now in Europe, we have a big difference between the north, east, south and west. And we are right now in the process of losing in the south a whole generation. We have a huge youth unemployment rate in south, in Greece, in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy. Every second young one over there has no chance to get a job or to start anything. And this is what triggers me, because if the south is lost, this is a really huge program. And for that, we also have to ensure the money is going there, that the dual system, which is really a good educational system, is going to be also some sort of being an idea of how to better fulfill the needs of the working space. That's it. Okay. Okay, good.
Rules, regulation, and research were some of the keywords that you mentioned. So I would like to open the floor now to the audience, similar to a town hall meeting. We only have very short time left, but you have now the golden opportunity to ask a question to 6 candidates from 6 different parties. So who would like to use that golden opportunity? And if I can invite you to stage to answer the question for the candidates, please. Or you can stay.
Hi, thanks for your pitches. So I would like to go back to the point of education. So we heard that digitization is not part of the German education today, or not really, and we have to get on this to make kids today fit for our future. I would like to hear from you if you have any idea how we can do that. So is that something the state can do and should do, or is that something where we should have companies come in and help with the supply of hardware, software, and infrastructure? And that's something I would be interested in.
Okay. I think we have to do both. I mean, there is a hard stake for state, and we just changed the fundamental law here in Germany to be able to have all the levels acting together to have enough money to invest in schools and equipment, but we have also to invest in the qualification of the teachers. So we have to modernize the qualification system for the teachers, to modernize the content. This is a state has a state to do. And then we have to cooperate, in my opinion, with private enterprises, because we have to be quicker now at the rest. We have other pilots in Europe, like in Estonia, for example, but not only in Estonia, also in France, and other schools are better equipped than in Germany. And so I would cooperate also with private startups, with private enterprises, everybody who is really interested in having a digitalized education system.
Okay, thank you very much. We are almost running out of time, but 15 more seconds to answer that question, and then we'll wrap it up. So, Mr. Breyer, your turn.
A good start would be to drop mistaken policies. For example, trying to ban students from taking their own devices to school, or from censoring their internet access, because they are dealing with the environment anyway, and you need to educate them how to use it responsibly, and that is not done by preventing them from using technology or by trying to shield them from it.
Mr. Bütikofer, the last intervention is up to you.
Just a sentence. I think we should also use digital learning platforms. SAP once came up with one, which I thought was very interesting. We should integrate that into the system.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you, the audience, and of course our candidates and the jury and the band for your participation. Good luck for the campaign, which starts after Easter. It's going to be a short and intensive time. Good luck for you, and please to everyone, go vote on the 26th of May. It's an important election. Every vote counts, and yeah, the final ranking will then be up to you. We will see in the polls how you voted. So thank you very much and enjoy the day.